Hey guys, how you doing? This is Craig here from Bass Lessons Melbourne, and today I'm joined by Lauren Pierce for our player profile video. So thanks for coming around, Lauren.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really great to meet you.
Yeah, you as well.
Like myself, you're not from around these parts.
Right, right.
So whereabouts did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And when I moved over here, I had been living in Texas for about 5 years. I was living in Denton, which is a little bit north of Dallas, and then I had been living in Austin for a couple years before I moved over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, growing up, did you come up in a musical family? Or?
Well, my dad and my whole dad's side of the family is really musical. My dad is a professional musician. My uncle wasn't a professional musician, but he was always playing music. Yeah. My grandpa was the same way. My grandpa actually made instruments. He mostly made guitars, and so that we were always had music around.
So it was
anytime.
Always part of the fabric.
Growing up, that sound of acoustic and electric guitars playing is just brings back memories. But my mom, not so much. She's loves music, but just kind of not. She's an accountant, and so she sings in the shower.
Well, somebody had to have a normal job.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I did grow up in a musical background, a musical family, and so there was a lot of support and understanding of what it was like to be a musician from that way. So.
And did you start learning really young?
Yeah, I started playing music with my dad when I was, as young as, I could stand up basically, but I started piano when I was 7, and then I sang all the way through, elementary school, you guys call it primary school here, yep. And middle school, high school, and then I started playing bass when I was 11, when I was in middle school orchestra, so.
Right. Yeah. Was it one of those things, all the other instruments are taken, we need a bass player? Or?
Actually, no, it's usually like that for upright bass, as you know, but for me, I don't know what it was, but as soon as my teacher got out the bass, I was like, I want to do that one.
Yeah.
I still have no idea what it was that drew me so much to it, but my teacher actually was like, I don't think that we should put you on bass, you're too small. So I think you should do violin, and I kind of trudged home, okay.
Maybe cello?
Yeah, I don't know why she went straight for violin, but maybe I was just actually really tiny and I don't remember it. But I came home and I told my mom, because you have to get parent permission, whatever, and she was like, no, you're playing bass. So cool. Mom was total champion
she fought for
that. Yeah, totally.
But I mean, even as a grown adult, it's a physical instrument. Double
for
bass.
Sure.
So as an 11-year-old, what was that learning process? Where bass, and then after first lesson, you're like, this was a mistake, or were you just
no,
jazzed?
Not at all. I mean, I think when you're young like that, I think we have such a good advantage because, nobody that I knew at in grade 6 was in intense private lessons, except for one girl that had started when she was 2 years old or whatever. So we were all just playing in orchestra and just blissfully unaware of what we didn't know, and I think that's part of the fun for kids to start. So no, I had no idea. I was just like, all right, this is what I'm doing,
Cool.
So it was good, and it wasn't until later that I started to realize the bass is a little uncomfortable sometimes, so yeah.
Cool. And so that was a pretty good music program at your school?
Yeah. The arts are always the first thing to suffer, unfortunately, in public schools. But I was really lucky because my teacher was great. She was pretty intense, but in a good way, she was very no nonsense, but
Did she give you a really good grounding, basics and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And if she saw that you had some kind of potential or drive, then she really, really, pushed you to do, competitions, all-state orchestra, that kind of thing. And so I was really lucky that way, Honestly, I just feel really lucky that there was even a program at my school because, sometimes.
For sure. And were you still doing piano and singing at the same time?
Yeah, for a while there, I was doing piano. I was singing in, like talent shows and things like that, which was just kind of a fun thing. And then, I was doing bass. I mean, I really didn't get that serious about bass until I was maybe 15, 16, and I joined the Atlanta Symphony Youth Orchestra.
Okay.
And then I was like, I need to get my act together. These are like real musicians. But I played piano all the way until I took lessons till I was about 18, and then I stopped when I went to college. But yeah.
So you were like everything. Kind of grade 8 kind of level on the piano?
I don't know what that means, but sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you were like as good on the piano as you were on the bass kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. I probably had advanced a lot more on piano than bass at that point. I mean, it took me a while to really feel comfortable with the bass. With the piano, of course, there's always things to work on, things that I was uncomfortable with. But with bass, I think partially because it's such a physical instrument, and partially because I just hadn't like really, I don't know, sat down and like grinded myself into it. Like with piano and voice. It wasn't until college, really, that or university, until I really started to feel comfortable with the instrument. So.
Because like sound production on piano was that one finger and the note only exists in one place. Yeah,
there's a lot that's a whole lot easier, and I mean you're asked to do a lot more on piano for sure.
And potentially 8 notes at a time or something.
Yeah,
like that.
that was where I struggled, was like the 2 hands at once, which is the whole thing, But with bass, that was something I didn't even start to, think about until later, was all the different options that you have, and just because for so long you're just trying to get a sound that isn't terrible, out of the instrument. And so,
So finishing high school, you went on to study at
the University of South Carolina.
South Carolina.
And
you studying classical?
Yeah, I always did classical. Just because that was what I grew up with doing.
At home? Was that classical music at home with your...
Well, my dad kind of did everything.
Right.
We were talking about this earlier about annoying people that do everything. That's my dad as well.
Okay.
Like, he pretty much any instrument he picks up, he's like, great, So, but he mostly did, classic rock, jazz, anything but classical was his forte, But I studied classical all the way through school till now. So when I went to school at South Carolina, I was in the classical program, but I was doing music education because I thought I wanted to be, an orchestra director at like a high school. So that was how I started, and it wasn't until later that I realized that I wanted to be a performer. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because making that decision when you're that young, it's quite a big commitment to say, I want to teach this instrument. Because then one of the things I found with some teachers is that they just spend their whole life in an institution. You have primary school, secondary school, university, back to education.
Exactly. And it's not, there's nothing wrong with it, because you're going to, they're going to play gigs, they're going to like venture out in the real world, but it's true. It's kind of, you just go back to that education environment, and you kind of have to wonder, I guess.
It's just a broadening of the...
Exactly. And again, I know so many amazing teachers that are fantastic musicians that have, spent so much time honing their own craft as well. But that was kind of what I struggled with a little bit, because at one point I was thinking I was going to go out and get a doctorate as well. And I was thinking, I'm going to be in school for, 10 years?
Forever.
Forever. And then I'm going to go back and be in school again. There's nothing wrong with the education environment, obviously.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just the idea of, first of all, being an orchestra director sounded very fun, and I think it is. But then you got to deal with administration, and you got to choose pieces, and it's
not necessarily all musical.
Exactly.
And if you're passionate about music.
Exactly.
Those kind of, even teaching.
Exactly.
In a school, whatever.
And, it gets to the point where, I talk about this a lot with my teacher friends, private teachers and orchestra director friends, where, you have so much that can potentially get in the way of the students, you know, and the students are rarely the problem. You know, it's like coordinating concerts or finding uniforms or like dealing with administration issues or budget issues and that kind of thing. And exactly. And so, you know, for me, I want to, obviously I spend a lot of my effort, you know, in education and furthering double bass education particularly, but, you know, in the public schools, it can sometimes, there's no fault of anybody really, because they're just trying to do, you know, the best that they can. It can sometimes get a little bit clouded, I think, you know.
When you're in South Carolina, did you have like a teacher there who really started to kind of make things happen for you?
Yeah, definitely. My teacher, Craig Butterfield, was the bass teacher there, and he played a concert like the first day that I arrived on campus. And of course, you know, the whole studio had to go. Everybody went. And I just remember sitting there like jaw open, like, oh my God. Like I'd heard great bass players before, but he just sounded so different than anybody I'd ever heard. His tone quality was so different. It was so, I don't know, like mellow, but also beautiful. And also, you know, it was just, I'd never heard bass played that way before. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he was playing with a guitarist who he's played with a lot, and it was just so cool to see that, you know, to be able to watch your teacher and be like, that's like, he's killing it right now, you know. That was really, really cool.
I think that's important, is to have, you know, a teacher who you look up to, essentially, and can inspire you.
For sure. And, you know, I had that when I was in high school. I studied with a man named Doug Summer, who played in the Atlanta Symphony, and he was fantastic, you know, and I would go to Atlanta Symphony concerts and see him just dominate, you know, like Heldenleben or Beethoven 9 or whatever. And that was really cool, but I think I kind of got used to that sound, you know, the orchestral sound, which is great. But when you hear something different, you're like, oh my gosh, that's...
So what was he playing? What was Craig Butterfield playing that was...
Well, he did a lot of solo music, which is different than, you know, the orchestral kind of thing. But even still, for him, you know, he's just got such a distinct sound, you know, that it was so bright, and again, like, it was pretty mellow, and he also did a lot of music that I just never heard of before, which wasn't saying much because I hadn't really done a whole lot of listening, you know, before I got to school. So it was just, I don't know how else to describe it except for just different, you know. And there's still people now that I hear that I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. But I think because I'd just not spent time listening to my instrument, you know, until I got to school, it was just such a pleasant shock, you know.
Yeah. So. Did you have, because when I was studying, you know, we didn't have YouTube. Of that, did you get a bit of that?
I was, but, you know, I didn't explore it as much. You know, it wasn't until later when it really just started to get big, because when I started school, it was there. YouTube started in, 2004? Is that right?
Yeah, maybe.
For some reason, that number sticks out to me. So you totally just missed it. But
it's actually probably a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of just like funny videos, you know, that I would watch.
Cat videos.
Exactly. Cat videos, that was like great. They were really going strong at that time. But a lot of classical musicians in particular hadn't put their stuff out there, and I just hadn't. I mean, now you think, oh, I wonder what, you know, Catalin Mataro is doing now. I wonder if, you know, Edgar Meyer's put anything out, and you go and even just typing their name into Google will lead to everything, but also YouTube, you know, and that just wasn't even on my radar at the time, to go to YouTube and type in double bass, you know. I really just like did a pretty terrible job for a while there, just not listening to my instrument. And, you know, I got better at it, but it blows my mind just thinking about how I really just discovered all of the things that I love about my instrument, you know, since being in school, essentially.
Like,
you know,
10 years after you started.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's a good thing to come in, you know, clear from
I think it was.
preconceptions and that
I think
kind of
it was, you know, and I think now what's so cool about the internet is that, like, you know, like I was just saying, you can type in double bass in YouTube and you get so much. You can type in just classical music and you get so much. So you always know what other people are doing and what's possible. And
there's always benchmarks. And
yeah, and I think about hearing my teacher, Craig Butterfield, talk about the first time that he heard Edgar Meyer and just being totally blown away, probably the same way that I was blown away by him, and thinking for him, like, oh, that's possible, because he was playing like violin showpieces on bass, when, I'm sure that there were other bass players that were doing it, but he's the one that, was doing all the competitions and winning all the competitions and, so that kind of thing really broadens your perspective, it makes you think, oh, maybe if he could do it, I think I could do it, and I think about like Gary Carr playing the Swan on bass, for that like radio broadcast, and all the bass players out there like, hey, wait a second, I could do that. So anyway, to kind of bring it back, it was kind of cool though to not have that, because when you see people out there that are like half your age killing it, it's inspiring, but you're also like, oh dang, I gotta work on, but I know for me, for so long, I just had no idea what anybody else was doing. So I just kind of did my own thing, and I didn't have any stress of where I should be at a certain point, which I think helped a lot.
Yeah. Do you think it was good to be involved in performing from an early age, being in the orchestra?
Yeah.
I know a lot of, we talk about performance anxiety and stuff, and it's like, did you ever have issues with that, or do you reckon?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was actually a long journey that took me a long time to overcome. But it's different when you're playing solo music than when you're playing orchestral music, at least for me, because when you're on stage in an orchestra, you kind of look around and there's like 100 other
Safety
people.
in numbers. Kind of
thing. Like as long as you don't play like in a rest, which I've done many times, like, you're like, if I make a mistake,
just move the bass over in front.
Just put your bow in front of you, like, oh, it didn't happen. But if you're sitting in a section, like a full bass section of 8 people,
that must feel when 8 double bass players, pedaling like a
awesome.
F or something like
that.
It must
awesome.
resonate inside you.
Yeah, it's so great. Like,
oh, wow.
It's so much fun, and especially when you play in a section where you all are used to each other, and you kind of know what the principal is going to be doing and what everybody else is doing as well. You can kind of fit in as one. That's a really cool feeling, and with that, I don't feel as much pressure because, you are responsible for your own, for what you're doing, but you're also you're interacting and you're kind of leaning on each other. So for that, I never really had performance anxiety in that way. But as soon as I started playing solo music, I definitely.
And was that at university? You studied music?
Yeah. The
through
first
choice,
time,
or it was like part of what you had to do?
It's kind of part of the curriculum, like when you're taking lessons in university, you kind of have to play solo music. It just helps you learn the whole map of the instrument. You don't have to, but I think a lot of teachers.
To that,
yeah, and also for auditions, you will need to know some kind of solo music, because that's even if you're just doing the orchestral route, they'll ask you to play something, concerto, moving a Bach, something. So a lot of people spend a lot of time on solo music, and I spent a lot of time on solo music because I just fell in love with it.
Okay.
So it was a frustrating time going through performance anxiety though, because I wanted to perform, but every time I would get up to perform or be about to perform, I'd be like, I don't want to do this. Shut it down. I don't want to do this. I'll just go home and go to sleep. So it took a while to.
And do you reckon it would be related to not being prepared, or were you always on top of things kind of thing? Because I know when it happens to me, it's usually because there's that little bit of doubt, because you should really know this that bit better.
Exactly.
And then it just gets magnified and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think being prepared is, for me, I know that I over-prepare for the sake of just making sure that everything is, because if something happens or something doesn't sound good, I want to know that was at least not because I didn't put enough work in, you
Yep.
know? But I think you kind of have to figure out exactly the right way to prepare as well. You know, you might be able to sit down and play a whole piece all the way through, but do you know the piano part very well? Like, what's going to happen when you make a mistake? Are you prepared for that? Can you come back from that?
Yeah.
What happens if you can't hear yourself or you can't hear the piano? What happen? Like, how do you start the piece?
Because you take yourself from your practice studio to this alien environment with people and different acoustics and
Exactly. And you know,
lights and
exactly. And you know, as soon as people are in the seats too, it's like everything changes, you know. In a practice room, you could just practice in, you know, sweatpants and like dark lighting
or
and
just
whatever.
sweatpants.
Yeah, just sweatpants, like whatever floats your boat, you know, it doesn't matter. But then, you know, you've got so many other things. And then on top of all the other things you have to worry about, like the lighting and people and piano and or whatever, then you have to remember the music, you know? And
is that a thing you generally have to memorize it?
you don't have to.
Okay.
But I really like memorizing music if I can. I just think it looks cleaner and I feel better. I feel like I know it better if I have it memorized, you know? And I also feel like I can interact with, you know, if I'm playing with piano or I'm playing with, you know, a violin.
You can perform instead of being...
Exactly. I can, like... Because if there's a music stand in front of me, I'm going to look
You're
at
going to
it.
look at it. Exactly. Yeah.
And even if I try to, like, you know, come away from the stand, it's
your focus.
It's always there.
Because then you're shifting between two different mindsets between
Exactly.
that, and then it's just like, oh, there's a whole other world happening out here, and that can mess you up as well.
Yeah, and I don't feel like I can interact with the audience or like my, you know, musical partner in the same way if I have a stand like right there. But, you know, there are some settings where it doesn't make sense to memorize it, like chamber music or orchestra music, but for solo music, definitely. But then that just adds a whole other level, you know, and I do this weird psyching myself out kind of thing where I'll be playing something and everything's going great, and then my scumbag brain is like, you don't remember this part. And then it's just over, you know?
Yeah, like why?
I don't know why your brain does it, but I've just had to, I mean, again, it's been a long process for me. When I get that, I mean, because of course I still get it, but when I get that voice in my head, like, you don't know this part.
Did you have another voice?
Yeah, I have to.
Shut up.
Yeah, I've got to have like the angel and the demon, you know, like the demon just like, you're gonna mess up. You're gonna play that out of tune. You're not gonna remember this. And then the other, you know, the little angel is just like, no, you did a good job preparing. Like, you're gonna do great, and everyone's gonna love you, you know. And you kind of like, I have to fight those two, but it's almost, I don't know where that voice comes from. You know, whether it's like worry or it's just something like your brain just offers up because it's bored or something. But
have you done any relaxation things like Alexander technique or breathing things?
I haven't done Alexander technique.
Okay.
I had a friend that did, and it really helped him for just, you know, performing, not necessarily performance anxiety, but just performing more relaxed and not tensing up. But what really helped me was actually a book by a bass player, Barry Green, called The Inner Game of Music. That's what it is.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's a great book all on, it's not only on performance anxiety, but a big chunk of it is, it's mostly just about, you know, relaxing when you're playing so you can let the music come out, you know, and he has a lot of techniques that really helped him. And that helped me tremendously. I mean, it took a while for it to sort of implement, but a lot of what I do is, you know, some of the techniques in that book, and also, you know, preparing in the right way. Like I was saying earlier, you know, I can know the music inside and out, but if I get thrown off by, like, you know, the length of the program, or like actually, you know, going from piece to piece, or cueing my pianist, or like looking
all that
up
stuff
at the
that
audience,
you only do when
know?
you're on the gig kind of thing.
Exactly. Or like if a stand just like falls, you know, makes a huge like sound, what am I going to do?
Somebody's always going to go.
Exactly. And I can't just stop and like accusatory glance and then just keep going. It doesn't work that way, you know.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of you know, like leading up to a performance or a recording, I make sure at the end of the day when I'm really tired and really unfocused to go through the whole program And that always helps me,
Right.
you know, and it helps that little voice too, you know, when I'm about to go on stage and that voice is like, you're not ready. Then I can tell myself, no, actually, I'm probably more ready. Like I might actually be bored in this performance. I'm so ready,
Yeah.
you know. And that helped with the performance anxiety tremendously. And visualization was also really helpful, you know, to sort of, because anything can throw you off. Lights, not being aware of what is going on in the space, not knowing, you know, where you're going to put your in pin even is like a massive thing for me, which is so small. But
well, I guess it's when you've spent so much time with that music and hearing it in a certain way, in a certain environment, that when you take it into a different environment and all those variables have changed.
Yeah.
It's like learning something when I'm playing along with a song or something like that. I can play along with it, but what I don't realise is I'm making minute adjustments all the time to kind of fit in.
Yeah.
And then when I go and play it with the band, all those subconscious cues and stuff from the recording aren't there because, you know, they aren't the CD. So then immediately I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound like what it sounded like, even though it does, but it's just how my brain's learned it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just being so I actually have to like overlearn it.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. That's what it is. It's like not relying on those musical cues, but knowing that they might be there. You know, it's this weird. We have to be flexible, but also rigid with our own part in a certain way. You know, so.
Yeah. It was interesting what you're saying about, you know, doing it when you're tired and unfocused, because I remember reading an interview with Victor Wooten, and somebody said, you know, is there anything that you do to kind of get prepared for a big gig or whatever? And he says he likes to like go and do like a bike ride or exercise or workout and like exhaust himself.
Yeah.
Because then when he goes to perform, he says that's when he's at his most honest.
Yeah.
Like when it's all, he's kind of like spent and he can just only focus on that one thing.
Yeah.
I guess different than being all like hacked up and aware of everything.
Yeah.
Kind of narrowing down your focus, which is interesting.
Yeah. When I started to come up with this sort of routine for performing days, specifically for solo performances, you know. And it was all about just, you know, what choices can I make that'll help me tonight when I have to perform. And one of them was, like, I always made sure I would go on a long run, you know, at the beginning of the day. So you know, it's always good for you to exercise, but I found that helped a lot with, you know, just being nervous because it just kind of calmed me down and I think exhausted me a little bit.
Yep.
So I didn't I didn't spend the whole day just like jittery kind of thinking about, what's coming.
Something to do, right?
Exactly.
Take your mind off it a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, you
But
can't
at that
just
point, there's
practice
no point
all day.
if you have to practice on the day, then you probably haven't practiced enough.
Yeah. And I used to practice a lot on the day, but it was more just to sort of like ease my mind. And now, I don't know if it's just like I've gotten older or something, but it's now when I have a big performance, I'm like, I'm fine.
Well, you've done enough that you know that you've done
Yeah.
you've done enough that you can get through it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm also more comfortable with my instrument, you know, so I know that there's nothing I'm going to learn on the day that's actually going to stick in a performance probably, you know, and no technique exercise that I'm going to do that's going to magically make me play something more in tune, you know, than I was already, so.
Yeah. And the decision to do like solo performance music, well, just any kind of, you know, if you decide to be a performer, you know, you hear people saying, you know, they just do it for the audience. I don't know, I kind of do it for me first, and then, you know, obviously it's great there's an audience there.
Yeah.
But do you, like, sometimes do you ever question, you know, why you're doing it?
Absolutely.
Your reasons, like why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like why do I want to play in this band? Why do I want to play this music? Is it for at the end of it? You know, or you know, it's like kind of like, am I just playing so that people go, that was awesome, or is it actually because I want to perform?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I like playing bass. I'm like, do I really like playing gigs in front of people?
Yeah.
Where I feel pressure and I mess up and all that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I struggled with that. Well, maybe struggled is a bit of an intensive a word, but I thought about that a lot because, you know, I went through that whole questioning kind of thing where it was like, am I just doing this because I like attention? You know, and I mean, I think it was good for me to go through that because it really made me think about what's the purpose of what I'm doing. Am I helping people? You know, like, what am I doing? You know, like even a business owner that opens a shop, they've got, you know, the things that they sell, whether it's, you know, products or a service or whatever, it's for people that need that service, you know, and it helps. Even if they're just all about the money, like they're just passively helping people, you know. And I struggle with that a lot, because with education, I mean, of course, I can see in the many different ways that it helps students, you know, not just in a way that they are learning to play music, but it helps in a lot of different areas, you know. But with performing, I really had to ask myself, are you doing this just because you like it? You know, are you just doing it only for you and nobody else? And if so, is that a problem? You know, like, and I don't really have a final answer to it. It's just, I've realized that in so many ways, us performing does help people, even in, you know, a passive way, you know, like providing enjoyment, you know, a way for people to sort of forget about what they're doing for even a moment, you know. And
because you've been in that situation as well at performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Where, you know, I've watched even a video or gone to a performance or something where I just don't have to think about the terrible day I had, or think about, you know, all the things that I have to do or whatever. You can just kind of get lost. And it's not as selfless as, you know, a lot of other things may be, but it is a way to, you know, there is a way to help people with music, you know. And that was really what I struggled with, was about, you know, am I actually doing a good service for people, or is it just because I want to be a diva and, you know, play what I want to play?
I think, you know, we're kind of driven to that. Like we do all kind of, to some extent, want attention and acknowledgement for what we do. Yeah. But I think the thing that I come back to is, like, there's been moments where I've been playing where I've been in a space that I'd never enter into any other time in my being. Yeah. You know, so it's just like, well, that's kind of the goal. Not every performance gets there. Yeah. But, you know, certain sections of certain performances, there's definitely a space that I enter that I can only get from doing that. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like my main reason, is that it's just like, well, I'm making art, I enjoy it, I love the bass, and I love the fact that people are enjoying it as well. But it's kind of, you know, it's a release almost.
Totally. Yeah, and I like the way that you said that. You know, we're making art, you know, and what's the point of art?
We have to. I think we always have to remember that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, I think with music, it can be a hobby and it can also be a career choice, you know, with most art, you know. And so I think sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating when other people maybe don't see, like, how serious we are about, you know, what we do. But I've learned that it's, you know, again, it's just art, and we're just putting good things out to the world, and I have to remember that just like anybody else does, you know. So, yeah, put out some good vibrations. Totally. Yeah.
So, after South Carolina, what's next? Where did you go after that?
Well, I graduated from USC, and then I went to the University of North Texas to get my master's. Did not finish my master's, but
master's in
music performance. Yeah, and I went over to North Texas because the teacher there, Jeff Bradetich, is he's one of the big, you know, bass pedagogues in the world, and I had studied with him over a couple summers, and I just really, really clicked with him. I still love the way that he teaches, the way that he plays. He's fantastic. And my teacher, Craig Butterfield, was a student of Jeff, and so it just kind of made sense. And so I went over to North Texas with the idea that I was going to get my master's and then get my doctorate and be a college professor. And that was the whole plan.
So you went from orchestra director to
college
professor, still shying away from maybe I should just play.
Well, sort of. You know, I was going to be an orchestra director, and then I realized, no, I'm just going to play music. But from so many different angles, I was getting like, no, being a professional musician is really difficult. You're not going to have like the kind of financial support that you need to, like eat food and stuff. And so my teacher was like, well, have you thought about teaching at a university? And so then I sort of just took that idea and kind of ran with it, not really thinking that it's probably equally as difficult, to teach at a major university.
At that level.
Yeah, right. As just being a professional musician.
Yeah.
But it's, it's fine. We'll think about it later. So that's where that came from, and my teacher and Jeff Bradetich and Craig, both my teachers, had this job that allowed them to explore their own musical passions, and I think that that's where Craig was coming from, in particular, where he was like, you can still do the different kind of stuff that you want to do, but you can also be teaching and have a stable kind of life. But I think that was around the time where things were just really, really changing in the university system, where it's, there just aren't so many full-time double bass professors, understandably, because there aren't that many of us. So that's why ultimately I didn't finish my master's, because it was just...
How many years was it going to be?
2.
Okay.
And then the doctorate was going to be 3 if I did everything in time, which probably wasn't going to happen.
You seem like a glutton for punishment.
I know.
Solo double bass, starting when you're 11.
Yeah, I made a lot of the difficult decisions. Somebody has to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did about a year of it, and I was just kind of looking at like all the money that I was taking out, for student loans and things like that, and looking at like the job climate. And I have a lot of friends that teach at universities, and like it's great, but there's only so many jobs, and I wasn't even sure if that was what I wanted to do. So I figured, okay, well, I probably shouldn't keep taking out more money, in student loans, and maybe just try to do my own thing and see what happens. And so that's what I did. I dropped out and kept studying with Jeff.
Okay.
And
you stayed in...
Yeah, I was still in Denton at that point, and I was teaching privately, and I was freelancing and studying, and that was around the time where I started putting out YouTube videos as well. And
what year is this?
This was about 2012, around then. 2012, 2013 was around when I started putting out YouTube videos.
Yep. Of performing or teaching?
Performing.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just putting out performance videos, and then after that was when the teaching videos started, and it just kind of manifested and went from there,
Yeah, because I think deciding to teach is something that, I don't know, you can't really take it too lightly to some respect. Like, I know back when I was, maybe late teens, early 20s, I had a couple of bass students and I was teaching them. But I, what did I know? I thought I knew.
Oh gosh, I know.
I was like, no, this is how you do it. Whereas, and then I didn't teach privately. I didn't teach for years and years and years. And then when I moved here, I thought, well, maybe it's a way of keeping my head above water and get some students. Mm-hmm. And even then, maybe 3-4 years ago when I started teaching privately here, I still didn't really. I wasn't that good at it.
Sure.
I wasn't as good at teaching as I was at playing.
Yeah.
Bass,
right.
And so it took a while to actually get good at teaching and understanding students and how to, kind of help them as opposed to just show them what they're doing wrong.
Oh yeah, it's such a. It's a learning curve, to learn to teach. It's really, really difficult, and I still feel like. I know that I'm still learning the right way.
You studied it for 4.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was at South Carolina, I did music education for about a year before I switched. But I still there's a program called the String Project where you go through if you're training to do or be an orchestra director, and so with that, it's a community style thing where you can train and work with kids in an orchestra kind of setting. So I continued to do that, but it's really focused on the ensemble kind of teaching, not private teaching. I kind of feel like when you're training to be a private teacher, it's really just you just kind of do it through
Doing it.
copy. Yeah. And also copying what your teachers did with you. And, but even still, I taught all the way through university, like privately. And I think about I still think about some students, like some things that I told my students and think,
sorry.
If I had their phone number, I'd just call them and say, that thing. But even just learning to approach things and like you said, not just show them what they're doing wrong, but, show them how to fix things. And my big thing in the past few years has been teaching students to troubleshoot and also how to practice.
Yeah.
Because that was something that wasn't stressed a lot. I found that I would ask my teachers, how would I practice this? What would you do? And because I had no idea how to even practice. My whole approach was like, I guess I'll just play it and then see what happens. Yeah, and we both know that's not the right way to do it. So
and everybody learns slightly differently as well.
Definitely, and that's a big thing, is trying to figure out how to show someone how to practice in the way that they'll understand, but also, or the way that they'll learn properly, but also teaching them to figure out how they learn best, because I know what works for me, but it might not work for you, and it might not work for, a 10-year-old kid that I'm teaching. And so that's been something that's been on my mind a lot, is teaching my students to basically not need me anymore,
Give them the tools so they can learn themselves.
Exactly. And also, the whole practicing thing it's a skill just like anything else, and you can definitely do it wrong or just not effectively, so.
Yeah, interesting. So the YouTube thing started to take off, or?
Well, I don't know if take off is the right word, but it did well. I mean, it started a kind of process for me. I mean, when I put my first couple videos out, I really didn't even do it with any kind of agenda. It kind of happened by accident. Those videos were just for this competition that I was doing.
Okay.
And
where you had to submit a video performance thing?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was 3 videos, and you either had to put it on YouTube or I just put it up there anyway. I can't even remember, but I put them up there, and then like a month or 2 later, I went back and looked, and it had, like not a massive amount of views, maybe like 1,000, maybe 1,200 or something like that. But I was like, this is cool. And I had people commenting saying, oh, this is great. This is what, it was that, that praise kind of thing, But I thought, at the time I didn't have an outlet for my solo music. I was playing in orchestra gigs, because there's so many orchestras in Texas. So if you want to freelance, like that's what you do, it's cool. Every town has their own orchestra. It's awesome. So I was doing a lot of that, and I was doing a lot of teaching, but for my solo music, I really didn't have an outlet for it. And so I thought that would be a really cool way for me to get out the music that I love to work on and love to play. And so it wasn't for another, year that I actually made my next video. And then from there, I can only do so many at a time, because it's such a big, we were just talking about video production and how, time consuming it can be. But it was really cool to actually put my music out there and perform that way,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So then how did you start to get involved with the Discover double bass stuff with Jeff? And
Well, I guess it was when I moved to Austin, I thought maybe I could also do some teaching online as well. And I had been doing some Skype lessons, and, I was always teaching privately. And I thought, if my performance videos were doing really well, then maybe people would like to learn about, bass from me as well. So I thought I could just put some videos out and just sort of see. But then it kind of turned into this whole idea for an actual website, like similar to Scott's Bass Lessons or Discover Double Bass.
Yep.
And it was a huge project, and I put out like 100 videos that I'd recorded, lesson videos, that I recorded, and built the whole website, and like actually learned to code a little bit. Like it was a whole thing. It was cool, but it was also like,
you're like, I wish I'd studied some of this at uni.
I know. And so that was kind of how that started. And for a while, all my videos were just on that site where it was a membership-based site.
Okay.
And then I was kind of thinking, well, why don't I put some of those on YouTube where people can actually see what I'm doing? Because at that point, nobody really had an incentive to sign up, to my website.
Yeah, nobody knew it was there, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would put it like on Facebook, but what kind of reach did I have?
To your friends that are on Facebook.
Exactly, who aren't even bass players. Yeah. So I started putting some of those videos up, and
because essentially it's the biggest shop window in the world, YouTube, right?
It really is.
That's
People
it.
can see, and that's kind of how Discoverable Bass is modeled, where we've got these free lessons that we put out so people can, learn different techniques. If they can't afford to buy whatever, but also a way that they can kind of see, like Jeff actually does know very much what he's talking about. Maybe his whole course on this will be great, and so I did that for a while, and then
and that helped the numbers in the website.
Well, it did, but not a whole lot. My website really did not do that great, but it was a
Relative
learning.
to the amount of work that it takes.
Exactly,
right?
And it was. I'm glad that I did it. It was fun, and it led to Discover Double Bass, which is great.
Yeah.
So after a while, I still remember this. I started getting Skype students or Skype inquiries from people that were like, "Yeah, Jeff Chalmers told me to contact you." Jeff is the owner at Discover Double Bass, and I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." So I sent him, some messages saying, "Thank you, so and so contacted me and said that you whatever," and then I remember him saying, "Hey, do you want to catch up for a Skype call sometime?" And it's like, "Okay." Like, sure, but I don't know why you want to talk to me. And on that call, he, proposed the idea of me trying to do a classical double bass course. And, he was saying that he wanted to essentially expand Discover Double Bass to include a classical specialist, I guess, because he's very much a jazz musician.
Okay, right.
He's great at classical music, but I think that he wanted to sort of separate himself from that. Just,
there's two huge musical
it's
pillars, so to speak. So
yeah, it's a lot.
Sense.
So we did that course, and then it just from there we both kind of checked in, and he was like, "You want to keep doing this?" And I was like, "Yeah, do you?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So then it just
cool.
The rest is kind of history.
So where are you at with that? What's the most recent kind of thing you've been putting up there?
Well, recently I did an update to my bowling course, which was the very first one that I did. And it almost doubled, maybe even more. It almost doubled the actual course from the original content. So I kept all the original videos, but I just added, other techniques and other videos, other exercises, that kind of thing. So it turned into like a 5.5 hour long course. But before that, I had done a course on thumb position, and yeah, exactly, you got it. And now I'm working on a couple courses that I haven't started the filming process yet, but I'm hoping to start in a little bit. I'm doing one on playing solo music, and then another one on just general left-hand technique, which is gonna be massive. I can just feel it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be one of those huge.
That's the thing when you start
courses.
doing those things, is you go, oh, then if we're talking about that, we should probably talk about this. And
Exactly.
then you do that exercise.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And even
but
with
at least you're in it. You've got an environment where you can do all those. You could do 80 videos if you wanted to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about something like Discover Double Bass. Jeff has really given me just the environment that I can.
People get their money's worth. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
they definitely do. And with the concepts of solo playing course, I'm still even this morning I was like, wait, did I cover? No, I did. I should probably. It's just an endless amount of stuff that you feel like you owe it to your audience to include and talk about. And so that's grappling with that has also been kind of a learning curve for me, is figuring out what is actually important, what is the actual core of this course that I need to make sure is in there, and what is maybe just extra that I could include that would be fun, but what will become overwhelming, like what will do, you know, less good than, you know, add something important, if that makes sense.
It's an interesting concept, you know. I mean, we've all learned music from books, you know, method books and stuff like that. But learning, you know, in the age we live in, where people can log in and learn remotely, it's just like, do you get much feedback from the students? Like, do you get to, you know, follow the progress and see how they're getting on?
A little bit. I mean, in the way that Discover Double Bass is set up is, you know, under each video there's a comment section where people can comment. And I mean, honestly, I wish that people used it more, you know, because, right. I don't know what you're talking about. I wish that people did use it more because, you know, even just to let me know, like...
that people are watching it.
I think, exactly. But, you know, just to let me know, like, if they're having even a little bit of an issue, like, understanding a tiny snippet of what they're, you know, of what I'm trying to get them to do. But I'm always conscious of whether a specific video or specific lesson or the way I taught a specific lesson actually comes across. You know, is it coherent? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to someone that's starting from zero? Does it make sense to someone that's starting from an intermediate level? I mean, that's always a concern, and I've had a few students that have said about particular lessons, well, I think that you could have maybe talked about this. Could you add this in? And then it's usually on the lessons that I'm most worried about that people are like, no, that was great, you know? So I do appreciate the feedback either way, because it's not like a one-on-one lesson where you can see what their progress is. So. And
I think with all these things, I always recommend get a teacher as
well.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
It's supplementary to what you're doing. I think that's what a lot of students that I get coming through, they've just been trying to, you know, learn about modes from videos online or learn how to slap from online, and they come here and I'm just like, don't worry about all that just now. This is what you need to focus, because people we don't always know what it is that we have to work on, and that's where a good teacher can hopefully help out and go, okay, you know, actually before you try and do that, you got to think about doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that will help that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you get to a certain level, you know, you can buy a course or go to lessons online, but you have to also understand what you have to have an understanding of how to fix a problem. You have to
you have to have some kind of autonomous learning thing.
Exactly. You've got to have that experience. So
self-critical.
Yeah. Well, and I absolutely agree with that, and I always tell people, you know, I mean, like, it's your choice. You're an adult. You can do, you know, what you like with the course, but I think it would be really helpful if you also had someone there to, you know, tell you this looks good. This is, because it might be something even just really tiny that you don't even pick up, like your wrist is just a little too high or whatever. So absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And is there anything that, if you could go back, you know, in time and give yourself some advice or help, is there anything that you would have said to yourself back then? Or changed? You
mean just at any point in my life, or in particular when I was starting the video lessons?
Oh, no, I mean like just like when you were learning bass.
Oh gosh.
Like in your kind of musical development, like could you go back and go, you know what, don't worry about this, or focus more on that? Yeah,
I mean, I think, you know, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but listening was a huge thing. And once I realized what a good tool listening was, it opened up so many doors for me. You know, it's like when you're a writer, you need to be reading books all the time. You need to be reading, you know, your genre, other genres, you know, just so you can understand the inner workings of it. And
composer, you know, listening
Exactly. And so once I started listening to music, I mean, it was a way for me to sort of fall in love with different, you know, because there's all these subgenres of classical music. It's not just one thing. And different styles that I liked. I figured out what soloists were my favorite, and I wish that I had started that earlier, you know, like when I was a teenager, because I mean, I think that my journey I'm happy with, but I think it would have made me a little bit more excited, you know, in a time when I just kind of didn't have as much drive, you know. I mean, I was a high school kid, so I guess, you know, whatever. But yeah, high school things were more important. But I think I would have really fallen in love with the bass a lot earlier, and it might have caused me to maybe, you know, figure out some things a little bit sooner and give myself a little bit more.
I think definitely
options.
like one of the, you know, just thinking back to my learning was like my bass teacher gave me a mixtape.
Yeah.
A mixtape. Look it up.
Okay.
And it was all these bass players that I'd never heard of. You know, Gary Willis was on there, and Victor was on there, and just all this. Alain Caron was on there, and I just remember listening to it and going, "This is all bass." It just like, because, you know, like we're talking about before internet and stuff, so that was the only way I had access to that kind of music, and that made me go, wow, okay, the world of bass is this. Because up until then, my world had been what I had known, you know, and so just to see that was possible, and that was all the sounds, and that was all, and also that it was all these different things were not just acceptable, but, you know, praised and lauded and held up as good things. It's like, oh, you can really you don't have to be within the lines so much.
Absolutely.
You know, you can actually then forge your own path once you get to grips with it all. But you know, really developing your own voice is really important. Yeah,
well, and no matter what you do, no matter what you go into, whether it's, you know, a career in music or whatever. I mean, particularly if you're going into a career in music, there are so many different directions that you can go that if you know, what career choice you make doesn't have to be the only kind of music that you play, you know. If you're an orchestral musician, that doesn't mean that you can't play solo music really well. It doesn't mean that you can't play, you know, in a funk band, like whatever. You know, you can do whatever you want. And I think the internet specifically has really opened that up, because until then, I mean, I even remember when I was in school, it was like, okay, I want to be a performer. Yes, but what do you want to do, though? Do you want to be an orchestral musician? Do you want to do Baroque music? Do you want to do this? And it's like this choice that you have to make. Exactly. I mean, it makes sense because all of those have different techniques and whatever. But like you said, it's all music. Yeah. And you don't have to lock yourself into just one thing, no matter what your job is. You know, you can still explore. You know, it's all possible. Doesn't mean that just because you're a bass player doesn't mean that you're just the accompaniment or whatever, which is a really fun role to play, but there's a lot of other things that, you know, are possible as well.
Yeah, so, for sure. Yeah. So your time in North Texas, like, that's a pretty renowned university.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, the first time it came up on my radar was the Snarky Puppy guys.
Oh, yeah.
Were you around at the...
I didn't know any of those guys personally.
But I'm guessing their legacy has had a big...
Yeah, I mean, they were...
Legacy.
I think they had moved to New York by the time I got there.
Right.
But all my friends knew them or, you know, had seen them play like forever. I mean, they went through the program, and so they were really inspiring. It was really cool to see, you know, what they were doing and what they continue to do. Yeah. So, no, I didn't know them personally, but I saw them play, and, you know, I followed them pretty heavily. Yeah. So that was cool.
And one of the things that I noticed about them was when we were talking earlier about memorizing music, is that they don't ever have any charts in front of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which I didn't realise until after a while. I was watching the video and we were like, hang on, there's like 15 people here and there's not one bit of music.
Yeah.
And it's all and, you know, and they're recording it live with an audience and videos.
Yeah, no, it was everything, you know.
You know, and we did our little thing out in the garden, the two of us, and with the music down there just in case.
Yeah, just in case. But, you know, that was kind of the culture at North Texas. You know, in the big bands, you'd have a chart there. Yeah. But I didn't remember it being very common for people, you know, if you're in like a trio or even just going to see someone play at like, you know, like a coffee shop or a venue that has like, you know, like a listening room for jazz. I don't remember that being a big thing. I think most people, it was sort of ingrained in all of us, like just leave the music at home. And that was really cool, you know, because for some things like orchestra music and big band music, I think it doesn't make sense to to memorize it.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And do you have any, I mean, obviously we're in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
how does it compare coming from somewhere like that to here? I mean, have you had much experience with the live scene here or the education scene here? Like, how do you think?
Well, I'm still sort of finding my feet, you
Sure.
know, and
Yeah.
it's been a little bit of a long process because, you know, for so long I just didn't even trust myself to try to drive on these roads. So, like on the complete, not like saying anything about the roads here, it was like totally me on the other side, you know. But now, you know, I'm getting a little bit more confident with it. So for a long time, I was kind of limited in terms of transportation, but with the music scene, I mean, they're obviously like totally different scenes, you know, but one thing I really love about Melbourne is the live scene, you know, live music scene.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I don't know what it was, but when I first got here, it just really stuck out to me that people love going out and hearing live music. And even just little things, you know, like I swear in some gigs that I would play in Texas, like no matter how much I promoted the gig, if it was free, like didn't matter. It was just really hard to get people out, probably because we're all working musicians, you know, but even just people that aren't musicians, it was kind of hard to get people to come out and see live music. Not always, but here it just kind of seems like people are really hungry for that, you know.
Because it's interesting because I've had a lot of musicians say the opposite here.
Oh,
know?
really?
It's just like it's so hard to get people out and stuff like that. But I guess it's all relative to where what you're used to. I mean, people here complain about the weather. And I'm from Scotland, so I'm just like, shut up. For you, it's probably a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. You get, you know, really sunny and like scorching hot days for like, you know, like one summer we had like 100 days over 100-degree weather in Texas, and that was just stupid.
Wow.
But, you know, here the weather just changes so much, which is funny. Yeah. But, you know, going back to the music scene, I mean, like you said, it's relative, but it's just assuring, I guess, that people are really interested, and you know, it doesn't even really seem like it matters the kind of music, you know.
Yeah, whatever you're into is
exactly.
Is here. For me, it was almost like a mini New York. Like there's a Latin scene, you know, there's a rock scene, there's a punk scene, there's a fusion scene, there's you know, whatever you're into and there's really good players.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunity to sort of explore, you know, if you've never heard, you know, like a true Latin band or something, then go out and find it, you know. And it's also cool to me that, you know, people are just they just want to go out and hear music. And so if you put your music out there, you know, and you book a gig, like you'll have some people there, you know, people will go out and it seems like they search for it, you know, and that's really cool. And also, you know, the amount of orchestras that are here, I mean, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of orchestras in Texas, but Texas is huge, to be fair, you know, and it's still pretty special, but there are so many community orchestras here, which is really cool, you know, so people that aren't professional musicians and really just, you know, even hobbyists doing it kind of on the side can go out and play, you know, they have the opportunity to play in public, and I think that's really cool, really inspiring, because I don't remember a lot of community orchestras in Texas in particular, you know, definitely not as many as here, you know, that play as regularly as they do. So that's been really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any concept or idea about what it was going to be like, or the players that would be here, or the scene before you got here?
A little bit. I mean, I had some friends here, I had some Skype students here, and so I'd kind of talk to them about what the scene was like and what they were doing. But, you know, it's always different when you actually get into a place and you sort of see what people are doing. I mean, one of the biggest things is, you know, just the amount of people that are here compared to like, you know, Texas, but also like New York City. I mean, it's so different, which is cool because, you know, in a way, like when there's so many people, you just have everybody there, you know, and you can meet all these different people that, you know, you could potentially click with or clash with, you know, you just have no idea, and there's so many opportunities. But here I like that they're, you know, it's not as heavily populated, you know, so there are less musicians, but it seems like because of that, there's more opportunity for each musician. And I could be completely wrong about this. I'm just a foreigner.
No, I think, I mean, from my perspective, it was like, it was big enough that there was enough work and a good enough scene, but it wasn't too big that you felt lost.
Exactly.
Like New York, or you get swallowed up kind of thing. So Melbourne seems like it's got that kind of nice balance in terms of size, and the music community at least seems really, you know, accepting and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that really drew me to Melbourne was, you know, the people really, and the opportunity, and, you know, it's also prettier than Texas.
You reckon?
Yeah. I mean, Texas is beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
But I'm, you know, a beach girl at heart, so I really missed that when I was in Texas.
Yeah, right.
You know, so.
Yeah. Are you looking to do orchestral stuff here, or are you kind of throwing yourself into the solo world? Have you done much performing since we got here?
No, I haven't done much solo performing, no. But, you know, to be honest, I'd really just like to do whatever I can, you know. Like, I love solo playing, so obviously that's always going to be a part of my life.
I guess you don't really need to choose solo playing or orchestral. You
Sure.
can definitely do both, right?
Yeah. I mean, I love to do some orchestral gigs. I would love to play solo concerts, you know, house
Chamber
concerts,
music.
that kind of thing. Chamber music, you know, I'm, you know, just in the same way in Texas that I was just kind of open to whatever, you know, I'd like to see what I can sort of get into here as well. So. And
is the level comparable?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm still just like
figuring
kind of
out,
here, but I mean, I don't know. I haven't lived like a whole lot of places around the world, you know.
Have you done a bit of traveling before? I mean, have you?
Not really, actually. I mean, I've lived in a few cities in the States, you know.
Which is kind of like traveling different parts of the world.
Well, yeah, totally. You know, but I mean, you kind of learn that wherever you go, I mean, there's no one city where like everyone's fantastic and one city where everyone is terrible. You know, everyone is special in their own way.
But
and I don't mean that.
There's definitely meccas and hubs. You know, places with great universities, or places like New York or LA or Chicago. They're going to have. You know, there's going to be a certain caliber of musician that exists there. Yeah,
but you know, one thing that I think is kind of a telltale sign is if, you know, the live music scene, I think, you know, and if people are going out to hear people, they're not going to keep going out if they're constantly disappointed, you know. And anytime I've gone out and seen someone play, it's, you know, I've always enjoyed hearing what they're doing. And the Melbourne Symphony, I just love, you know, they always sound fantastic. And even the community orchestras, like, it's crazy, just the level, you know, for people that, I mean, you're not getting paid for it, so it's all just a sort of passion project, you know, but they put a lot of work into it, and the level is really inspiring.
Well, it's great to have you here.
Oh, thanks.
You know, I hope it's the start of a great career path for you. And,
thank you.
You know, and you get to play and teach and meet people and grow.
I appreciate it.
So yeah, everybody, Lauren Pierce.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.